stupid money pouring into agriculture to fix problems we don't even have. And that's what makes it stupid. But it could be smart. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of The Business of Agriculture. Are you looking for productive efficiencies in growing higher yielding, better performing crops? New Fields Ag provides a complete portfolio of biological products focused on you, the farmer. Visit newfieldsag.com for more information to help you farm better. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. Got a great one for you today because they're all great ones, and I've got some great guests. I've got Rhishi Pethe, and he is the proprietor of a company called Metal Dog Labs. Also puts out a newsletter called Software is Feeding the World. I've got Walt Duflock, ag thinker, a member of the Business of Ag Success Group, and the senior vice president of innovation with Western Growers Association. Walt and I have known each other for a while. We've talked about this offline. I said, let's just go ahead and do an episode about this. It doesn't have to be stupid money, but it seems that it is. Outside money pouring into this industry, the world's most important industry, and it's because they are ill-advised. About a year ago, I recorded an episode and said ideas agriculture can use and ideas agriculture should lose. And it goes down this road exactly. So if you're a listener of this show, if you're a viewer, and I hope you are a viewer, you can go on YouTube and check out all my episodes, also on Acres TV. I said, we want your innovation. And we'll gladly have your money coming into our space. But for God's sakes, ask somebody that's in this space what we might actually need. Because the example I gave was the company that continually was pitching me, and there's several of these companies pitching me to be on this show. They took shipping containers, and then we're going to ship them to the suburbs where people could either put them in their backyard or bury them to have their own source of food. Americans don't want to work that hard. Hell, they didn't even garden for more than about a week during the whole pandemic thing, and they decided this is effort. So you're telling me, not to mention, if you asked all the homeowners associations whether they want a bunch of crappy, old, rusty shipping containers sitting around their neighborhood, likely not. Again, ideas are good, but many of them should be thrown away, and that's what you understand when you're in the creative business. Money and investment is good, but take ideas and take your money and then take some guidance from those of us that work in the space of the world's most important industry that have a bit of a breadth of an experience and might be able to give you some guidance. Walt, you and I have covered this. You used the Larry Ellison example, so let's just start off with that one.
Let's do it. So, Larry, again, you and I and Adam Bergman had a chat, a year and a half ago on the podcast. It was great. Poor Adam. He had to defend it, which he did admirably.
By the way, that was about control. That one was about what happened to the indoor agriculture revolution that never materialized. And the idea was within 5 years, this was a few years ago, within 5 years, we're all going to be eating kumquats, bananas, and lettuce that's raised in a warehouse outside of Cleveland. I'm like, that's a cute idea, but I'm not sure I see it. And sure as hell, it never materialized. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So out of that vertical farming mess, and just to remind everyone, Damian, we put $7 billion into this mess in a couple of years, and it was one of the reasons why agtech funding took a big drop, is because when you have that kind of poor performance across $7 billion in a space that doesn't have that much capital, the investors start to shy away next time. They didn't shy away, though. Well, in this case, it was largely Ellison didn't shy away from the vertical farming space. He put this operation in place on Lanai, this Hawaiian island. He bought the island, I believe, for $300 million, put another, $500 million into just the whole ag side of it. And from the start, it was really interesting, Damian. And this is why you have to wonder, why did he go out and get pressed for it, right? He should have seen this coming. It was positioned as basically a kitchen sink, right? It's just everything thrown at it. It was going to be a job source for the island. It was going to be a food source for the island. It was going to be a food source for exports. And then when it got down to the blocking and tackling of actually building a growing operation, the guy hires, and believe me, Ellison's one of the great entrepreneurs of our time, so he's not a fool.
So incidentally, right? If you're listening to this or watching, you're saying, wait, why are they talking about this Larry Ellison guy? Larry Ellison, co-founder of Microsoft, right? Or Apple?
No, CEO of Oracle, founder and CEO of Oracle.
Okay, I get my tech companies, okay.
He's like Gates, but he started and I think Gates might have owned Lanai at some point, but Ellison owns it. He's got this, huge island, Hawaiian island all to himself that he wants to do stuff with. Here's a guy who started Oracle in the 70s, grew it to a billion dollar company. The guy knows how to do enterprise software. But does he know anything about putting a food system, an agricultural operation, or a massive island-based world domination play in ag together? He does not. And he hires a famous chef as his co-partner on this one. It was just doomed to fail, and that didn't stop the media from fanboying I mean, they were just all over this thing for a couple of years. It took until last year, Damian, 6 years after they launched this thing, for someone to realize, you know, maybe they really weren't solving a problem, and maybe they weren't solving one specific problem, and maybe the economics were going sideways from the minute this thing launched, which is probably true.
So the actual project, in case, and don't go Google it now, keep listening to this show. The point was 6 years ago, Ellison, with gazillions of dollars, says, I've got to fix agriculture and I've got to help people. We're going to starve. And there's a lot of misguided motivation. They've been told, because they're not in our space, that we're going to starve. Or they've been told climate change is going to make it so we can't grow food. I can tell how many people pitch me on this. And I'm like, have you not looked? We're pretty much oversupplied and overproduced on everything. And you think that somehow the weather is making it so we can't grow food. That's not even true. Bought this island in Hawaii, massive amounts of infrastructure development to create something that's now just a big money pit. Is there ever been anything come out of it? Did they actually produce anything?
They have relationships with, I think, 2 retailers on the East Coast, but that's through Ellison's network. I mean, nobody else would get those type of deals, right? It's just because Larry knows guys from meeting them in Sun Valley at conferences. No other startup would have that opportunity, right? He's still got his celebrity chef doing some stuff. He's spinning it to a nutritional play where they can build healthier food for healthier you type stuff. So he's spinning like crazy. At its core, Damien, you're exactly right. They're going to produce food that's overpriced. The entire production system is wrong economically, and it's no surprise. How are you getting shelf space with guys you don't know from your conferences in Sun Valley when your economics are sideways? You can go to Taylor Farms, Braga Fresh, Driscoll's Berries, and get good SKUs at $4 or $5 each, and put them in your store, $6, $7 each. The same product coming from Ellison's operation is going to cost you twice as much and take twice as long.
And the other part of it is, since many of the plays then were about eat local, save the environment, fix climate change, first off, the amount of infrastructure put into this thing in Hawaii was not good for the environment. Secondly, when your nearest customer is the East Coast of the United States, last I looked, that's a hell of a big carbon burn to get a food product from the Hawaiian Islands to the East Coast of the United States. Rishi, we're not against it. You said it before we hit record. We're not against outside money. We're not against outside ideas. How do you see it?
No, I agree with Walt. I think, as you're saying, right, there are a lot of problems within agriculture. I don't think anybody can deny that. There are labor problems. There are, are we getting nutritious food problem? We have an obesity crisis. We have a lot of challenges. And we need investors, we need ideas from not just within agriculture, but outside of agriculture as well, right? I don't think there is any industry which is insular to say we'll only accept ideas from within the industry. I think that is stupid. So we need to be open to ideas from the outside, investment from the outside. Having said that, I think like in this example, the Larry Ellison example, as Walt said, Ellison is a very smart guy. He has built a multi-billion-dollar business. I think the way he went about it was probably not the right way to do it. And if you look at some of the initial marketing material, they promised AI-powered greenhouses, sophisticated sensors, robotic harvesting systems. These are all technology enablers to solve a problem. And they didn't really talk about what is the real problem they're trying to solve. And to Walt's point, if I'm a consumer, if I go to the store, if I want to buy leafy greens or whatever product it is, what am I looking for? I'm looking for good quality, reasonable price, maybe good shelf life, nutritious product. So that's what I'm looking for. There might be some section of the consumer base which is excited about, the carbon footprint or, some version of sustainability. Like, let's not ignore them. There is a segment of that population, right? So if we think about all of the attributes that I'm looking for in a product, what Larry Ellison and team were doing, they were not hitting any of those attributes, right? It was expensive. It probably tasted the same, maybe not very different. It did not, to your point, have any impact on the carbon footprint. In fact, it probably made it worse. And they didn't follow a good first principles thinking process, right? They tried to get technology from Israel or somewhere where there's a lot of sun. Those greenhouses work in the desert, whereas Lanai is a very windy place. There's not a whole lot of sun there, and you have to put greenhouses there, right? So just a lot of weird head-scratching decisions that they made, which no sensible person would make. And, Walt talked about the person they put in charge. I mean, I almost call that like you hired Dr. Phil to solve a farming problem. Like, that's not going to work. So there's just a lot of missteps in the whole process that they went through. So yes, we should not say no to outside money, but I think and outside ideas, but they need to be tested against what is the problem you're trying to solve. Does it solve a customer problem or not? And if it does, yeah, more power to you, right? That's awesome.
I would agree with all that. All right, real quickly, while we're talking about money, I want to talk to you about how you should fund your agribusiness. You know what? It doesn't have to be hard. If your operation is unique, and it is, because every agribusiness, and I'm not talking about just farms. It could be a farm, could be a ranch, could be a small agricultural processor. If you need money, why are you trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with one size fits all ag credit? Listen, I love the farm credit system. They're clients of mine. I love my ag lenders. I work with Community Bank. That's all great. But sometimes there are things that you want to do with your agribusiness that they can't understand because it's completely off of their reservation. Harvest Returns can help. Harvest Returns is essentially an agribusiness company that wants to help agribusiness using a pool of over 18,000 investors and creative financing options. Harvest Returns can bring the capital you need to reach your goals with your agribusiness. Farm, ranch, agribusiness. Go to harvestreturns.com to learn more about how you can get started with growing your operation today with the money you need. All right, I'm going to throw a little term at you. I like to make up a term sometimes, and you guys listen to my stuff. I'm going to call it, while we're sticking with the Ellison thing, because it seems like there's a lot of seed money comes from billionaires. So my term, billionaire-agance, billion-arrogance. I've made a shitload of money doing something, starting Oracle, being in the tech sector. Most of them tend to be in the tech sector. And I'm so good at this that I assume I'm going to be good at everything. And so I was sitting with my buddies at the country club or wherever billionaire tech people hang out, being tech bros, and they say, you know what? Basically, the one business is not being ramped up, and using all those words they like to use about monetization and ramping up and scalability and all those buzzwords that we love to hear. We're going to go, we're going to scale up, and their premises generally are that we don't know what we're doing in food production, that there's a good chance we're going to die from climate change. First off, that's not true. We do know what we're doing. Secondly, we're not going to die because of climate change. Look at our productivity. And thirdly, that we just never had any other ideas come in. Almost like there's an billion-arrogance among the billionaires that we're still out here like Ma and Pa Kettle, or like the American Gothic picture with our pitchfork, and that if they just swoop in and save us, like we're, the knight in shining armor saving the damsel in distress. And so I really got to say that some of these things, welcome it, Rhishi, but Walt, am I right? Is there a billion arrogance that thinks that somehow we just were too stupid and we didn't have enough business wherewithal to ever do it until they swoop in and do this? Because most of the things they come up with, like the Ellison idea, are like, you have a lot of arrogance. I can look at this and tell you from 9 different vantage points why this is a stupid money idea.
Damian, it's a great term. I will borrow it liberally and maybe give you attribution some of the time. No, it's right on point. And you're right. It applies to tech. You've seen so many tech bros coming in with checkbooks, right? So all these ideas. You saw a lot of them in the vertical farming, right? It wasn't just Ellison. That's just the latest example. Another hot space that you and I like to beat up on that's cooled off a lot is the alternative protein space. Look at all the Hollywood money. Look at all the tech money that flowed into Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger, all the cricket burgers you can eat, right? Yep. And it's like, what was the problem they were ever trying to solve, right? I'm sorry. I go to the Safeway, I grab a couple burgers, I go to Price Club, I grab a couple burgers, I go to Whole Foods, I grab a couple burgers. Those cheeseburgers are just fine on my barbecue. I wasn't looking for a new cheeseburger, right? And I don't know how many folks were.
Well, let's throw this out there. And Rhishi, I'll pop it to you because you even said, you quoted one of my statements about innovation. Henry Ford famously said, you got to be careful about customer surveys. And I don't know if he actually called it that, but he said his famous thing was, if I had asked the customer what they wanted, they would have said, I want a faster horse. And obviously he invented Model T, mass production, interchangeable parts, assembly line, paid his workers more than what he would have had to compared to the sweatshop or even the meat processing of the day. And all of a sudden, a car in every garage and a chicken in every pot was the thing by the 1920s, 30s. So you got to be careful about that. The consumer never asked for a fake burger, but it was worse than that. Like you said, what problem they thought they were solving? I guess they went down the climate change thing too, didn't they? Wasn't that their
They 100% did. I mean, Damien, at one point, and as a guy who grew up on a cattle ranch, they accused the livestock industry, and I have the quote exactly, of being the clean coal of the food supply chain. And you're like, okay, so you can see where they were going. They were going to be healthier. They were going to be better for the environment. They were going to be all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, they were none of it, right? What they were was a $20 premium burger when I'm used to paying 12. And what they also were was just overpriced, bad unit economics. You look at Impossible, they tried to deal with the Whopper at Burger King, right? They tried to get into all these stores. They're still in all these stores. Why did they cool off so badly? Because the consumers looked at it and said, you got to beat me on, Rhishi said it earlier, it's got to be on taste, it's got to be on quality, it's got to be on price. Those are the three main criteria for consumers buying. It's still the main three criteria. When they look at the burger right next to the Impossible Burger and it's a third less, and it's better tasting and they know what it is. Again, this is the thing with innovation. You have to be meaningfully better than whatever you're trying to replace. I've never seen Impossible and Beyond as meaningfully better than anything I'm eating, today.
What was the pitch, Rishi? What was the pitch on fake meat that you think would have stuck, or what did they get wrong?
Actually, that's the funny part. I don't know what their pitch is because I've heard so many, 10 different pitches over the last couple of years, right? So
Yes.
I'm a vegetarian, right? I'm not a meat eater. So initially I thought they were targeting someone like me who doesn't eat meat for whatever reason. And I have nothing against people who eat meat, right? Just to be clear.
I was just going to say, Walt, you brought a vegetarian onto the business.
We're working on him, Damian. We're working on him. He likes a good barbecue joint. He's okay.
So, yeah, I thought that you'd say, okay, if you target the vegan vegetarian crowd, and by the way, it's the real number is like 2%, maybe 3% are truly vegetarian, because most people say, oh, a lot of people that say that they confess to being vegetarian really are not. I'm a vegetarian, but I also eat fish, and I really like bacon. It's like, well, then you're not vegetarian. So you're still talking about really a targeting only a couple percent, and you can make a lot of money targeting 2 to 4% of the population.
So I think some of the pitches that I've heard is, one is, this is a good protein source for vegetarian people. There is this prevailing sort of messaging that vegetarians don't get enough protein, which is partially true, I would say. I think number two was there is a section of the population who want, who don't agree with animal-based food, right? Like they don't want.
That's because of animal rights, right?
Whatever it is, right? And so those are some of the, and then there is some environmental, as Walt is saying, there's some environmental logic that is being made about this, right? So let's go through all three, right? So I have tried Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat products. They taste like crap. Like, I'm not going to eat them, period. A way better, like if I really wanted to get a protein source, I'm not going to go for an Impossible Burger. There are a lot of beans and there are a lot of other things that I can go for to get that. Second, I think, was around sort of the environmental aspects of it. Even that is not very clear, right? Like, is it, to Walt's point, it has to be really good compared to the current option for somebody who is really looking for that value to get attracted to, right? Even I don't see that. And number three, this is sort of animal cruelty or animal sort of, ethical issues. Maybe there's something there to attract a certain section of the population. I'm not sure. But that's the only thing I've seen where they could potentially try to sell something, right, to a particular section of the population. I don't know how big that is. That's the only way where somebody's willing to pay a premium. Like, okay, fine, I don't want to eat an animal product, but I like the taste and the feel of this product, which is, by the way, crap, a personal opinion. Then that's why I'm willing to pay more or even the same price for it, right? So again, going back to whose problem are they trying to solve? Not clear. What problem are they trying to solve? Not clear. And that's why we have all these issues that we see happening.
I want to get into that exact thing about if you're going to come into this space, any space, be more clear about what problem you're solving or what the pitch is that is going to excite the consumer. Because what Walt said, you've got, if you're going to be a startup in any space, you better be almost differentially better while being just different. You know, different alone. Yeah. Contrary to what a lot of people think, just being different. God, there's some woman that was on the speaking circuit 10 years ago, and she was popular, and I thought she was a knothead because all her thing was different is the new better. I'm like, I walk into a restaurant, and instead of seating me, they kick me in the balls. That's different. That's different. I'm not sure it's better. You know, so I'm not
better is better. Different is not better.
All right. Hey, a word from our friends at Redox Bio-nutrients. A new year brings hope for improved outcomes on your farm. One way to achieve that is through the high-tech plant nutrition provided by Redox Bio-nutrients, which is a family-owned company in business since 1994. Great folks up there in Burley, Idaho. I've been to their headquarters twice. They got a greenhouse. They got great research going on. They're trying to help farmers put products out there that you can reduce your basic harsh, all that synthetic fertility. You can use bio-nutrients. You can offset cost and also not lose yield. In fact, you might increase yield. Really some good stuff up there. You ought to check this out. Redox Bio-nutrients began in specialty crop, moved on to turf, and now increasingly broad acre. You can learn more about Redox Bio-nutrients going to redoxgrows.com. That's redoxgrows.com. Check them out. Great folks. All the biological space is completely overdone. We're going to get into that, talking about money pouring into ag. This company's been around for 31 years. You don't stay in business for 31 years with investor money throwing out crap. This is actually proven. Okay, about Beyond. I just looked up their market capitalization. When Beyond Burger came out with a boatload of money, honestly, a raft of celebrity money, to Walt's point, Bill Gates not only brought money, but lobbying, and also at one point in an interview with MIT, said that we really need to switch to all fake meat for the good of the environment and our health, which means he's trying to prop up his own investment. He used all the lobbying mustard he had. He had used all the connections, all the free media, Leonardo DiCaprio and a whole celebrity entourage, a raft of money. When Beyond Meat then became a publicly traded company, within not too long, the market cap, meaning the value of what this company was supposed to be based on promise of future sales, was $377 billion. What you think about that? That's what the damn company was supposed to have been worth. Today, me, Walt, and Rhishi could buy Beyond Meat. Market capitalization, $210.8 million. You're talking about a company that is worth a few percent of what it allegedly was once worth. And I believe that we really, if we're going to give advice on, you want to pour money into agriculture, fix a problem. Don't just be different for different sakes. Again, use the example of you walk into a restaurant. Would you like your seat, sir? Oh, I'm going to kick you in the balls. That's different. It's not better. And then here's the next part of it. Why would a consumer want to buy up? And I think that Rhishi hit it. He doesn't even eat meat, but he thought, okay, this is geared to me because I'm a vegetarian. Well, it really didn't satisfy that. There's much better options. The taste wasn't there. You can't really even deliver on the environmental promise because many would say, I don't know, man, harvesting some beets and then trucking over some palm oil from Indonesia doesn't seem very environmental. The consumer saw through a lot of the fluff and almost crap that was the marketing of Beyond Meat.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe getting Leonardo DiCaprio was prescient because of Titanic. I mean, the stocks seem to have stunk like the Titanic there. So,
well played.
That's right. Yes, it's beyond. He sunk Beyond Meat almost as fast as the Titanic went down.
Right.
Walt, what is the advice then when you look at this? We can keep giving examples, and we will. If you're going to come into this space, let's go to the Larry Ellison thing. This is where you've brought this up. If you and I said we're going to go into tech, Damian and Walt and Rhishi, let's say the three of us, we've had a modicum of success doing what we do. Rhishi knows tech. You know, I know how to sell stuff and be entrepreneurial. Walt knows how to make all sorts of networking. He's got probably the best network in California in terms of ag. God, we can pull this off. Well, we need a fourth person. Well, let's say we're all sitting around and, hey, wait a minute. What about Larry? He's our chef. What? Who thinks then I'm going to go into this venture and what I really need is my personal chef is going to be in charge of this business? That screams of something. I don't know. Bad business, stupid money, something.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. The article I put out a while back alongside Rishi's on this was if Bruce Taylor, who started Taylor Farms 30 years ago and is now a $6 billion enterprise plus, said, I'm going to go do enterprise software, the press would laugh. They would say, you're crazy. You're a food guy. What are you doing over here in software, right? And yet when the tech bros get their mindset to it, they just lose their mind and start writing checks. So, big picture wise, Damian, it's kind of interesting. So the two spaces we're taking so many swings at today because it's so easy to, but it's worth remembering: vertical farming, the CEA space, and the alternative protein space. Remember, when ag was flying high with $53 billion in 2021, those two segments by themselves were 40% of those dollars. Let me repeat, $20 billion out of that 53 plus was vertical farming and alternative protein, right? So yes, people lost their minds at scale. Just to show you how much things have cooled off, we went to 32 billion in 2022. We went to 15.6 in 2023, and we're at 16 billion in 2024. So the new normal is $16 billion a year in ag tech funding from venture capital, right? That's less than just those two segments 4 years ago. That's how much it cooled off. And that's in large part because those idiots didn't do anything with that money that was positive. So the people that wrote them checks, the way it works, Damian, limited partners write checks to venture capitalists.
Yep.
Venture capitalists write check to startups. Startups get IPOs and mergers and acquisitions and give money back to the start the funnel again. We can't restart the funnel in ag tech right now in those two segments because nobody's getting exits. The numbers you just gave are the same for all the vertical farms, right?
Incidentally, I looked it up because it dawned on me. I conflated a number, and it's not because I was trying to in any way mislead. It's just that I do a lot of reading, and then every now and again I get a number wrong. The market capitalization at its zenith 5 and some odd years ago for Beyond Meat was pushing 8 billion, is down to 210 million. So again, the multiple is still the same. It's like a small fraction of what it once was valued at. But after I said that, I'm like, wait a minute, it didn't go from 300. Hell, it would never have been worth 307. It was worth about 8 billion. So anyway,
exactly right. Well, and I would argue this. So to your point, when all the money comes in, I would argue of that 8 billion, brand value was probably 7 of it. Actual product value was less than $1 billion, right?
Yeah,
and why did that brand value get so high?
It was all hype. What is the value of this hype that we've invented? Yeah, it wouldn't have been, if you look at what the other value was, what little bit of infrastructure they would have had, buildings, facilities, and then actual product, and then also what could have been backed up by sales. So this is not uncommon with startups, as we all know. Rhishi can probably get into this. Amazon forever had a value of a company, a market capitalization that would have never been supported based on their sales. And now, obviously, different story. But for a decade, it was never justifiable based on the company's revenue.
Yeah, but I mean, if you take the case of Amazon, I mean, they backed it up, right? With the amazing execution that they've done on the supply chain logistics, their product portfolio, their customer centricity, I mean, every day a package from Amazon shows up at my door, right? Like I don't even know who's ordering it anymore now. So, they've just done an amazing job on execution and their strategy, and they've stuck to it. And they have even sort of found new business, right? I mean, they're the ones. I mean, if you take sort of Walt's example there, like what is an online retailer doing in starting a cloud business, right? That's what they did with AWS, right? So, but they were smart enough, Jeff Bezos was smart enough. He put the right people in place. They put the right discipline to say, we can actually grow this. We have seen this working internally. Now let's externalize that, right? So I think that is very important that, people are focused on the right set of problems. So,
look at this problem, Rishi. Look at this problem. For instance, when we say some of these people in ag, they come in, and the biggest problem they always think they're doing is, again, I keep going to it, and I know I sound like a broken record, they think they're saving us from climate change, which is just not a threat. I mean, we have adequate amounts of production, but the other part of it is, I'm sure that the people at Costco, Walmart, Sears, JCPenney, name whatever, retailer said, what the hell's this guy know about retail? He's going to try and save us from having to go to retail. This doesn't even make sense. Who's going to go on the internet and buy their groceries or whatever it should be? he made life easier. He made it so that you didn't have to go anywhere. And obviously that caught an amazing bounce with then being forced to stay home or work from home or whatever. So he already had the idea. The problem he was solving was human laziness. He appealed to human laziness, but then got a bump. A lot of the stuff we're talking about in ag, the problem they're fixing isn't even really an issue.
Yeah. And if you look at two spaces that I think so what's our job as kind of commentators in the space writ large, right, Damian? You pattern match, right? So vertical farming, fail, walk through that. Alternative protein, failing, walk through that, right? So now you look and you say, well, okay, we're down to $16 billion. We better use that wisely. That's all we have now.
$16 billion of outside money or even inside money. $16 billion of money that's coming in to the ag space annual. Is that what you're saying?
16 billion annually, which is roughly 70% down from 4 years ago, right? It's crashed down really hard. And so how do we spend that wisely? Well, it's our job collectively. The two people we have to really beat up on this case are the media, which trumpeted all this stuff, foolishly so in a lot of cases, and the investors, even more so, Damian, they wrote the checks. Like, you can write a column and you still make a paycheck, right? Yep. You write a bad investment check, that's going to be a problem, right? Yep. So those two groups are the groups to get after. The two topics I'm working with them a lot on right now are what is going to happen with two areas. First is climate smart, right? And you can imagine with the current administration, that's not a really interesting topic like it used to be a couple months ago. And the second is biologicals. And I'm a big fan of biologicals when they go right, but I'm not a big fan of the snake oil that's still out there, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to work hard with the growers. We have to work hard with the investors. We have to work hard with the media to identify which biologicals are doing the job, which ones are not, and which climate smart products are doing the job and actually measuring carbon and sequestering it and stuff, and which are not. Because if we don't get that 16 billion spent wisely, the only good outcome, Damian, is private equity comes along and picks up a lot of those assets for a song. Yep. Which, may end up okay, but it's not what you want to end up.
Some of them they won't even want because they don't make sense. All right, I want to go to Rhishi.
100%.
Rhishi, I give you $16 billion. You're a thinker. You're an entrepreneur guy. Tell me where you're going to, and I will go through the problems in ag that you listed, but I want you to tell me, you got somewhere to go with $16 billion?
I mean, I'll just keep it, not give it to anybody, but that's a different story.
It's like Metal Dog Labs is going to become a big company.
So you're not allowed to give it to yourself. What do you want to do with it?
No, I know, I'm joking. I think there are a lot of challenges, right? So one is here in California, labor is a big challenge. Like, how are we going to solve that problem?
You say label is a big problem. You mean that it's confusing?
Labor. No, not labor. Human
labor.
Resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's no question. And then that goes to automation.
Right.
And that's been a push for a while. Right. And I pointed this out. This is where we need the Uber mindset, meaning Uber, as you pointed out, in one of my statements, Uber was not invented by the CEO of Yellow Cab because those people thought that their competition was the local bus. They never thought about it's a guy named Bob with a Toyota Camry and a cell phone. We need the labor thing and automation, and then it goes to autonomous. I will tell you that I'm not sure that John Deere or Case IH or New Holland are going to be the companies that take us to where we're going to go with automation and autonomous machinery. It could end up being an Uber type play because it might be so out there that the legacy manufacturers aren't quite thinking about where it can go. Is that an idea that you think you could get on with?
Yeah, I mean, they are thinking of autonomy. The question is, is it going to cannibalize their existing business or not? I think there are a lot of other considerations that they have, right? And I think if you look at the history, at least within the US, it's about bigger and bigger and bigger and more powerful equipment, right? Like you could have a 500, 600 horsepower combine or tractor going through a field when it was, 50 or, 100 horsepower, maybe a couple of decades ago, right? So the push has been towards bigger and bigger machines. Yep. And because of consolidation in the space, I think that works well. Now, there is an orthogonal path that somebody could take and say, you know what, because we are doing autonomous machines, even in that bigger machine, you still need somebody to drive, ride that $1 million machine. But if you go down the path of autonomy, which takes out labor, now there could be potential second order effects, which says, you know what, instead of putting one big $1 million machine in a field, let's put 10 machines, each of which is $50,000, right? And it doesn't need any people, and you can control it from a distance. And I think that could completely change the paradigm of how farming is done. And that could potentially, to your point, bring in new outside players who know how to do this really well, and use a different business model compared to what has been, pushed for by, these big corporations for the last 50 years.
Got it. I agree with that. Problem in ag that I look at, and that we can go down this road here anyway. So obviously, Walt is big on the tech. Most tech. So we got the labor one, and I think that's huge. And by the way, what about labor where it's been very hard to automate? Specialty crop, meat processing, and then obviously it's hard to get a robot to pull a piglet out of a sow. I mean, those are the ones where those are going to be challenges for a while.
Those are tough robots to build.
Yeah.
So let's stay on specialty crops for a minute, right? Let's look at two of the leaders. Carbon Robotics does laser weeders. These are $1.4 million machines, right? These are big robots with fancy lasers, a lot of stuff that can break. Not something you'd think might work with farmers. And yet, what has Paul Meixel managed to do? He's managed to come from an area where he had a $2 billion startup cell that he built to EMC in the storage space. So he was in enterprise data centers, right? He had a $2 billion outcome. That's a great outcome. That's a great outcome for everybody, investors, Paul, the team. He then switches over, ends up running into a guy in Idaho who does Hawaii produce, and he says, "Hey, we need some laser weeding robots. Well, we need some solves for labor," is what it started as. Right. And so here's a guy from tech listening to a farmer talk about his problems, working with them for years. The company's now, I think, 7 or 8 years old, and so here we are in year 7 of the company, I believe. And they now have a $1.4 million laser weeder sold 100 times, Damian. Mm. And NVIDIA, the hottest tech company on the planet, was part of their last funding round at $70 million. They now have $150 million plus raised. But you know what? With 100 machines and support and maintenance contracts on all of them, and now a new suite of products rolled out in Tulare in February, they're on their way, right? So here's a case where a guy from tech listened to farmers, got some of his old friends to put some money in, and he's figuring it out in real time. He's one of the leaders on the big side. Small side, there's Charlie and the team of Burrow, who I've known for 7 years. They've got a $15,000 little robot, right, that goes through the field and does things. It's just harvest assistant, can help your harvest crew by taking this stuff back to the truck. It can take all your horticulture products and move them around your horticulture operation, right? Which I didn't realize how much they do on horticulture operations. So Charlie's got 500 machines out there in market. They're moving 25 a month. And again, Charlie grew up on a farm, worked at Case. While he was working at Case, nights and weekends was doing Burrow. And now Burrow's a thing with venture capital money from real venture capital firms. So what does it take to win in automation? You got to solve a real problem at growers' economics that work, and you got to service the heck out of it. Paul will tell you, and Charlie will tell you, they've had to over-service some of their customers because they know that if they do that, they will get a good reputation. And if they don't, nothing spreads in farming like a fail, right? Nothing spreads the word faster at the bar or the coffee shop than fail. And they luckily recognized that and got it solved. So those are two examples of guys that are doing it right in a space that's tough, but they figured it out.
Rhishi, nutrient. We prioritized production, efficiency, quantity, resistance to perishability, shippability, and nutrients. Really, since I'd call the second ag revolution, which I'm going to call post-World War II here in places like the United States, nutrients were a secondary consideration. With that, then we get the obesity, we get diabetes, we get only 20% of 20-year-olds right now could pass the physical fitness to be in the armed forces. I mean, for God's sakes, this is not something to take lightly. That's a problem in ag. Does money come in to fix it?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a movement towards that with the whole Make America Healthy Again topic that is quite prevalent. Personally, I'm a bit skeptical that the way they're going about it is going to work.
Well, that's top-down government. That's government push, and then money might come in to respond, but oftentimes the money doesn't know where to go until there's the regulation, because then there's the money scared of where the hell is this puck going to move to it. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely issue of government regulation or top-down approach. I think the second is, I don't know what is the real diagnosis of the problem of obesity crisis. Is it because we are putting out products which are low nutrient density or low nutrient quality? Is it sort of public policies on like zoning rules, right? I mean, that's one of my favorites. I have to drive 2 miles to get to my nearest grocery store because there is no mixed use. Zoning is not allowed. So if that was allowed, I could walk to my grocery store, right, and get stuff. So there are a lot of, I think it's a very complicated issue. I don't think we can say, oh, agriculture does not produce enough nutrient products, because, all that stuff that are the fruits, the vegetables, the grains, ultimately, they are put together into what you eat, right?
Well, we produce plenty of that stuff.
Yeah.
By the way, well, I get it that our friend Rhishi is not a Native American. We just said you could walk to your grocery. I think that he's not been to enough American. Have you been to Walmart? They don't even walk when they're in the Walmart, let alone walk to the Walmart. They ride those electric carts around in the store. So the idea they're going to walk to the store, hell, they don't even walk when they're in the store.
Yeah, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that it's a complicated issue, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean, when I lived in Chicago, I would walk to the store, right? Because it was right downtown. And I know not everybody lives in the cities. Sometimes you have to drive. A lot of people live in the city. So you have to drive. But I don't think you can just fix the problem of obesity by saying we're going to grow more nutritious food. I think there is, again, it goes back to what is the problem you're trying to solve and whose problem are you solving? And it's not like we as consumers don't know that. All of us know if you eat in a bad way, it's going to hurt us in the future, right? So it's not an education problem as well, according to me. It's something different.
The consumer, if you're talking about will the money pour in, the money. Look at the rise of what do they call GLP-1 drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, etc. Yeah. There was business predictions that it would take a decade before they caught the scale that they've already caught in the first really year. The weight loss industry. Oh my God, 60 billion. We spend more on weight loss as an industry in the United States than the GDP of most countries, all but maybe like the top 15, 20, 30 countries of the world. Yeah. So the money is there, which would justify the entrepreneurialism and the investment. So when you think about the nutrient issue and then it tying into the human health, it's not really. There's a lot of companies, but they don't tend to be on the ag side. Walt, what do you? And it's not because of a lack of produce. You know this. You're in California. Most produce gets wasted. It doesn't get consumed. Most produce that gets produced ends up in a landfill or fed to animals or thrown away.
Yeah. No, this one's an interesting topic, Damian. We talk about it a lot because the bogeyman in this case was one you'd like to go after, right? So it's funny. In so many discussions, ag is the bad guy, right? But if you actually take the food is health movement, take Maha out of it, right? Or didn't take RFK out of it, just food is health, food is medicine movement, right? Guys like Carter Williams have been on this for a while and in front of Congress. There's no industry that I'd rather be taking swings at competitively right now than big pharma. Mm-hmm. And so, as Carter says, you can go two ways with this, right? You can either fix the problem after it shows up with pharma, or you can stop the problem before it shows up with better food. Mm-hmm. And so the pharma part of it's a $1.9 trillion spend a year. The food system part of it's a 1.7 trillion. If you just got that to 1.8 each, that's a huge move in all directions, right? And there's nobody I'd rather put on my competitive slide if I'm a startup than big pharma, because again, all they can do is break fix. They can't do prevention. That's not their role. And so I think what Maha does is it crystallizes a lot of the food is health, food is medicine, and catalyzes it for both government to come in with dollars, which again, we're not always wild about, but if they're going to come, let them come in the right way. And then your private public gets together and suddenly the private side can can bring dollars to match.
Yep.
And whether it's building new food products, building new incentive systems, building new wearables, building new whatever it is, there's certainly going to be an incentive, because Rishi's right. Part of it's nutrition, but part of it's, hey, just get off the damn couch and go walk, right? So either way that's going to be good. That creates a whole new set of innovation opportunities, which private and public funds go further when they're matching, right? When they play with each other.
I see. Yeah, I agree with all that. And then intrinsically linked with nutrient is actually flavor. We think of flavor, and Rishi's nodding his head, so he's going to go first. In countries like the United States, where there's such a food processing system, and there's so many companies that have been around forever and ever, that, you know, obviously you start naming the food companies, from the Kraft Heinz and, you know, Conagra, name on down. Flavor didn't mean naturally derived flavor. It got easier just to have a really bulk amounts of production and then use artificial flavors. And that has arguably contributed to part of what we're talking about with the health, dare I call it a health crisis, but our health challenges. And there's a compelling movement, I think, and I'm part of it. We can put flavor back in pork by putting fat in the pork, and all, you know, lard coming back as a byproduct, which maybe it will now, the popularity of beef tallow based on RFK. Flavor, I think, is a place for investment. I don't know that it's an entrepreneurial play, because it's really just talking about enhancing the products we already produce. What do you think, Rhishi?
No, I think you're right. I mean, you know, as a consumer, what do I want from my food, right? I definitely want healthy food. I want nutritious food. I want convenience. I think convenience is a big factor. And that's why you have all these snackable items, right? The baby carrots is a great example, right? It's so much easier to eat baby carrots than a full carrot, because it's sort of bite-sized. It's the same carrot. It has the same nutrition profile. And you're even saving some carrots which you would have thrown away, right?
So I think going to very healthy things, bite-sized carrots. I was thinking bite-sized Snickers. This is we're different here at Rhishi.
Yeah, yes. No, bite-sized Snickers, again, that's not healthy, but it's convenient, right? So people are valuing convenience over health.
Right.
And the challenge is convenience is right here in the moment. Health, it impacts you 10, 20 years down the line. I think that's the biggest challenge that we need to solve.
Right.
And so can we make healthier food, healthier options, which are convenient as well, right? Mm-hmm. If it's going to take me an hour to make a meal which is healthy compared to I can just pop a few Snickers, guess what choice I'm going to make, right? So I think that's an aspect that there could be a lot of innovation there, where how do you create products which are reasonably priced and convenient to eat, but at the same time, you know, nutritious. And there is no, you know, there is no stigma, stigma is not the right word, but, you know, we like to eat sweet stuff. That's what we like to eat as humans. So, you know, we just pop those things when we shouldn't be.
Walt, are we going to fix the flavor void because all we did was concentrate on quantity, perishability, shippability, etc. And an affluent country with more than enough stuff being produced. Mark Schatzker, the author, has been calling for this for more than a decade. Guys like you and me are here saying it. Will it happen?
You know,
or is this where it takes outside money coming in?
Well, that's right.
To address.
So the question is, can the large CPG companies come up with flavors that are better for you and command premium dollars, right? I think that's really the question, Damian, is can you turn that flavor investment, that R&D in flavor, into a premium product? And I would like to think so, because I certainly see enough stuff on the shelves that's bragging about that. And I think you brought up a good example. I mean, our meat products, my God, we've bred them for volume to such a degree that they're now, I mean, you and I've joked about the pork business with Todd. I mean, it's just, we could have much better pork if we were willing to have much better pork. And,
it's very fixable. It's very fixable.
It's very fixable. And so I think that, you know, back to the earlier discussion, right? Who sussed out the vertical farming and alternative proteins? The consumer, right? Who's going to suss out the investment in flavor and premium pricing the next 10 years? The consumer, because they're either going to give you their wallet when they hit the checkout counter, or they're not. So unfortunately, like you said earlier, right? Any color you want, as long as it's black. And Steve Jobs, how do they know what they want before I give it to them, right? With Apple, I mean, you're going to have innovators get lucky and skate to where the puck's going to be and be right a few times on premium products with better flavors. Obviously, Impossible and Beyond didn't get there.
One thing, I think there is an efficiency play also, right? Like if you produce something at scale, you can drive down the cost, right? So that's why there's a lot of cheap stuff out there that you can produce. But like one example I've seen, and it's probably not a great example for health, but like microbreweries, right? Microbreweries have taken off in the last 10 years. So there are microbreweries everywhere. Before that, all you could get was, some sort of, Bud Light or whatever. Like
Macro
there's a
brew.
bunch of brands, yeah, macro brew, right? But the consumer said, no, we want something different. And that has spawned the whole
proliferation alone, Rhishi. We thought I've got friends in the beer business. And by the way, you offended me by being a vegetarian. Then you said, I'm not sure I can compare microbrews and beer to being healthy. As a beer drinker, you saying that first off, you insult me by being a vegetarian.
This is not going well, Rishi.
No,
I'm
not getting invited again. Yes. I'm not getting on this podcast again.
So answer me this.
Yeah.
We thought, anybody would have looked at it and said, this is just another fad. This thing will go for 5, maybe 10 years. The microbrew thing has not gone away, and I want to say it's in its at least 30th year.
100%.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. We have examples where you took something which was mass-produced, probably bad tasting, but now you have way more options in terms of a consumer product, right? I think, can we apply those same principles and can we bring innovation so that now you could have 20 different types of, pork products, which are convenient to eat, they're at a regular price. And
we're seeing a little bit of
better
that
flavor, right?
We're seeing a little bit of that, Rishi, like the Neiman Ranch and things like that, which are smaller brand, and they're promising D-Still Ranch turkeys. They've been on my show where they're promising a more flavorful micro food versus macro bulk quantity, not so flavorful. So there's that. One of the things I talk about a lot. If you're really concerned about the environment, instead of continually telling me how you're going to come up with this magic thing and it's going to, go to a Hawaiian island and slap $1 billion of infrastructure down on nature, you want to take care of the environment, reduce food waste. Where all the fertility gets used to make the food, all of the transportation gets used to move the food and grow the food, all of the land got cleared to have the fields to grow the food, and then a third of what we produce we dump, we waste. That's the biggest play, I believe, for environment. The problem is there's no appetite to take it on as an investment because instead of producing and selling something, you're reducing the sale or the growth of something and all of the inputs that go into it. So if I'm a billionaire and I want to spend my billions and not be guilty of billion arrogance, I'm going to go about fixing food waste. Walt, you go first.
Yeah, I think it's true, Damian, and it is a massive challenge, and I think you have to segment it out, right? So a third of it is behind the farm gate, right? Stuff that we never harvest or get to the customer.
It doesn't even get harvested. Still in the field, dies in the field, gets plowed down, rainstorm, rots because we can't have infrastructure.
100%. And that third's hard to fix. A third of it's in our fridge, right? And it's leftovers and it's all that stuff that doesn't get fixed. It's really the third in the middle, right? The third on the way to the customers from the farm to the fridge. That's the third you can fix. And there are companies out there doing that, Full Harvest and a couple others where they try and recycle it. There's Imperfect Foods is doing some of this stuff. So in most of those cases, you see
like charitable nonprofits that are, trying to intercept some of that, and food banks.
Actually, and it's even more than nonprofits. There are food box companies as well. You're right. And there's been grants to help that. One of maybe the only silver lining of COVID these days was you had some great food box programs that came out of that with government funding. But I think most of these startups have been able to get venture money with exactly your premise. I'm taking a massive problem called food waste. I'm solving it by doing X. And in the case, B2B marketplaces in some cases. So I think there are dollars, there are innovators, there are solvers in that space. And I think it's early days and good things are happening, but it is a massive problem that, again, you can only really address a third of it, the third in the middle, right? The farm part's really hard and the fridge part's really hard.
All right, let's go away from the things where if we want people to stop spending stupid money fixing problems we don't have, we just gave you a bunch of problems we do have. No, that was really at production. Our friend Todd says, you want to fix a problem in pork industry? Figure out a way to get a 600-pound sow that dies out of a crate. There's a bunch of other things, and this is the tough part, Rhishi. A bunch of the money, what they know about what happens in agriculture, they've read about it, someone told them about it, but they never really experienced it because they never did the production. I see a bunch of smaller things. The problem is there's not enough market size to justify the venture. Is that where that's where the other problem is? The problems we have beyond the ones we just named are small enough as a percentage that they don't merit big swings of capital coming in to fix it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the other challenges we have in ag, which is what you're talking about, is that there are hundreds of little problems that need to be solved. So let's take an example of, let's say I design a robot which can go and harvest apples, for example, from a tree, right? Now, if I'm a venture capitalist, I want to fund that startup. I'm going to ask, okay, you're doing this well for apples. Okay, let's figure out how much revenue you can generate. Now, can you go to, and that's not going to be good enough for me to be a venture funded business. And the only way it can be good for me to invest is, can you take that technology and the go-to-market that you've come up with and translate that to a bunch of other crops without spending a boatload of money, right? Like if every new crop is the same amount of money, that's again not a VC fundable business. Can you get sort of learn enough to say, okay, I can turn the crank and say, now I can do apples. Now I can do all the other tree crops. I can take the same thing, do strawberries. Can you keep adding that? And that is a technical problem that those type of technical problems we have not solved. And that's what makes it very difficult for a VC firm to come in and say, okay, I'm not going to fund something which can only do apples. And if it's going to be very expensive to go to the next spot, right?
Well, to Todd's point, he says, you want to fix a problem? Try and get a dead 600-pound sow out of a hog confinement facility. Until we just have a robot that is capable of lifting 600 pounds, and you say, hey, robot, go in there and grab that dead sow. And also, when you're done with that, go pick the apples. Until we have that, it's like program. It's like trying to invent one machine to fix something that's not really that big of a problem. And so every hog facility in the country can't have this $600,000 machine to get rid of the 2 dead hogs they have per year or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's why we need to look at different funding models, and that's something Walt and his team have been sort of very active on thinking about, and some of the other partnerships that they've done. So maybe Walt, you could talk about what are some of the other funding models when you can't use VC dollars always to fund certain innovations.
Yeah, no, it's a great time to bring it up. You're right, Rhishi. So, Damian, this is stuff like strawberries, right? Where 90% of the labor for some strawberries, they can be very lucrative crops, right? It's $100,000 an acre on some cases, but you've also got massive costs. And so, if you've got $100,000 as a good year, you got 90,000 in costs, and running on 10% margin, maybe, right?
Yeah.
And then most of that cost is tied up in labor, and most of that labor cost is tied up in harvest. So the Strawberry Commission, which is an industry trade group, they looked at it and they said, okay, the only area that we have in automation that's fundable by venture is harvest. And they've done a lot of harvest robots actually in strawberries the last 15 years. Just none of them are going well, unfortunately. But if you look at every other thing, right, from runner cutting to detopping the strawberries to there's like 10 or 12 discrete functions that you need done to strawberries. All of those need to get solved because it's labor that needs to be automated, and we don't have enough labor and it's too expensive.
Yep.
And none of them are venture fundable. So the commission basically put together a plan to say, you know what, Cal Poly, you guys know how to do strawberries. You got some smart engineering students. We're going to write a couple of checks. We're going to set up a strawberry center on campus. We're going to pay 3 engineering leads, professional engineers, to run student teams. And you guys, using industry money, are going to develop these, do an R&D on campus, working with the growers. And when the growers say, we're ready to buy, we'll work with you to partner on distribution through local suppliers who can provide the items. So now you look at this 5-6 years later, these teams have put together 4 products that are out in market in the Central Coast through known providers out to the growers. Damian, they range from $25,000 on the low end to $1 million product, and they're getting sold. They're doing the work without $1 of venture capital. You're seeing solutions out there on the Central Coast today of California and strawberries.
So that, by the way, that's an innovative way of getting it done, but that's using the university. It's almost going back to the old system of the land grant systems as they were supposed
Totally.
to be. They were supposed to be there as a conduit to get technology and knowledge to the thing. All right, we got wrap it up here. Stupid money pouring into ag to fix problems we don't have. We talked about that. Does this get better, Rhishi? Is it going to get better? Did the money pour in because there was just so much of it. I wonder if, like, you start seeing some recessionary times. We've been in a really good, generally until a year ago, the ag sector was hot and there was a lot of money sloshing around looking for somewhere to go. Does this dry up just and fix itself? Meaning we don't get the innovation, but at least we don't have the stupid money pouring in to fix problems we don't have.
I mean, that's a good question. But I think, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So when you have, and I think almost having slightly less stupid money is, in the long term, I think is beneficial. And even the stupid money incidents, even though they were painful, like I think I'm trying to look at the positive side. I think now people have woken up to the fact that just because you throw money at a problem, it doesn't get solved. You have to have first principles thinking, everything that we talked about, right? So I think these are good shining examples for people like, Walt and you to point to, like, hey, don't do that. And be like, yeah, okay, that messed up. So I think we can learn a lot from these things. So I'm optimistic that even though people burnt up a bunch of cash over the last couple of years, I think, we'll hopefully feel the warmth of it, of that fire going forward, that, hey, don't do stupid stuff, invest money where it makes sense, try to solve a real problem.
Well, you just said throw money at a problem, and the premise of our thing is they're throwing money at things that really aren't problems. We told them what the problems are. We just said what the problems are. Walt, am I right here? I mean, you and I could get on stage in front of a pool of investors and say, you keep doing this stupid ass stuff. Me and Rhishi and Walt, put us on stage. We'll tell you the actual problems. We're not saying that we have the pitch of the fix, but we can tell you we're identifying the problem. Don't you think?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right, Damian. And I would also say the benefit of going from 53 billion to 16 billion is a lot of the dumb money's left the building, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the startup founders that would have gotten some of that dumb money, they either won't get that money or they won't even chase it, right? I mean, AI and so many tech things are still pretty hot, right? Cybersecurity is hot, AI is hot. If you're a hot young engineer coming out of university, we're going to have a hard time competing with you, but that also means you're not going to do a silly startup with dumb money. And so I think at the end of the day, two things happen. At $16 billion, you got to be a really good fundraiser and a really good startup CEO to go get capital. And you're going to have some real selectivity on the investor side. I mean, the investors have their pick of the litter, right? To no pun intended with the hog example. But I mean, they are going to have a lot of startup guys pitching them. They're going to have their choice of who to write checks to. It's not going to be that competitive a field. So I think venture capital stays at $15 to $20 billion in ag tech until one of two things happens. Either we get exit velocity from IPOs, and those are tough in ag tech. We don't make enough money and grow fast enough to get super excited compared to like OpenAI, right? And ChatGPT.
Right.
So IPOs are tough. Or M&A, mergers and acquisitions, needs to come back at scale, right? And that really involves, in the stuff we've been talking about today, automation. You got to have guys like John Deere, Case New Holland, and AGCO healthy with a balance sheet, an income statement that they can support acquisitions. They've done a few of them, right? Bear Flag, Blue River, Case New Holland with Raven and that kind of stuff, and others and joint ventures.
Yeah.
But until the acquisition activity picks up, that funnel I mentioned earlier where the limited partners have dollars, they put them into ag tech venture funds, they write the checks to startups. Until the acquisitions pick back up, I think those limited partners are going to sit on their cash or deploy it elsewhere.
Yeah, because their play is ultimately to put the money in until then it blows up and then they get bought, and so that's where you need that's where there has to be the pecking order.
I mean, they could just put money in AI instead, Damian. No reason to have to come to ag tech.
No reason to have to come to ag. And that's, like you said, it's already left. We went from 54 billion down to 16 in the last couple of years. His name's Rhishi Pethe, and if you want to find him, where do they find you, my friend?
Yes, you can find me online on Substack. It is sftw.substack.com. Software is Feeding the World is a newsletter. It's at the intersection of technology and food and ag. And it helps decision makers think through frameworks on how technology can enable new business models and help them compete better.
His other is joined by Walt Duflock. who I call Ag Thinker, but also the Senior VP of Innovation at Western Growers Association. He's on LinkedIn all the time, and he's connected with me and my friend Todd Thurman, which you can find there. This is the Business of Agriculture show, as you well know. Be sure to share it with somebody else that can enjoy this, and we're really trying to build up this YouTube following, so please go there and hit subscribe. Also, Acres TV. Remember, if you like this, you might like my new show, The Granary, which is shot with my friends from Extreme Ag at my on-farm tavern in Indiana. 400 episodes, basically, of this show that have been out there. I've been doing this for 8 years. So you know what? Kick this around. Really got a great following. I thank you for joining us. Always keep it intelligent. Always keep it smart, because I got great guests like Rhishi and Walt. Till next time, I'm Damian Mason, and this is the Business of Agriculture. Hey, sincere thanks for joining us here on another episode of the Business of Agriculture. I want to ask you, if you farm, are you looking for more productive efficiencies to grow higher yielding, better performing crops? Well, of course you are. New Fields Ag provides a complete portfolio of biological products focused on you, the farmer. If you want to learn more about the New Fields Ag product lineup, go to newfieldsag.com for information.